Have you been diagnosed with depression and struggle with sadness?
Maybe you're scared of being criticized.
Loss of interest, aches and pain.
Always thinking something terrible.
Ask your doctor about Effexor XR.
Ask your doctor about Cymbalta.
Talk to your doctor about Zoloft.
So talk to your healthcare professional.
Get with your doctor today.
Your doctor.
Tell your doctor.
Contact your doctor immediately.
Talk with your doctor.
För över 40 år sedan träffades ledande psykiatriker på Puerto Rico för att planera sin vision för framtiden.
We see a developing potential for nearly a total control of human emotional status, mental functioning, and will to act.
Deras plan, att till år 2000 skapa en rad psykiatriska droger som reglerar varje aspekt av mänskligt beteende.
I was diagnosed with depression and put on Paxil.
ADD, and I was prescribed Ritalin.
General anxiety disorder, prescribed Zoloft.
Bipolar disorder, and I take lithium.
PTSD, Zoloft.
I was on Paxil.
When they placed me on Zoloft.
They gave me Adderall.
I was prescribed Sibtamil,
Tegretol,
Lexapro, Depakote,
Stelazine,
Adderall, Concerta, Orazine,
Prozac,
Lorazepam,
Effexor,
Clonazepam,
Ritalin,
dexamphetamine, Paxil,
Silert,
Prozac,
Adderall,
Elavil,
Depakote, Wellbutrin, Seroquel, etc. etc.
100 miljoner människor världen över tar psykiatriska droger. Hur kunde detta hända? Psykiatriker övertygade dem om att de var sjuka.
They want you to think you're diseased from birth. And that all those experiences of life, childhood and adolescence and teenage years and adulthood and being a senior citizen, that these are all various stages of disease.
Because let's face it, we've all been depressed at one time. We've all been anxious at one time. These are normal emotions that we feel.
Every emotional and spiritual problem is reduced to a label.
And of course, all of those diseases require pharmaceutical treatments. This is big business.
Trots att psykiatriker skapar avsevärda inkomster genom att hävda att de är läkare, erkänner de ogenerat att deras yrke saknar vetenskap.
We don't really have any specific blood tests or other tests that are definitive for any mental illness whatsoever.
It would be neat if it would become much more scientific.
Well, if you go to my office and you tell me that you're depressed, there's nothing, and no blood sample or whatever, no tests.
There are not current available tests to verify your diagnosis.
I don't use any tests.
You do not have a test to say, well, this is this disorder and this is the best medication for this disorder.
For many years we thought we had the tests nailed down, but it turned out that they weren't of any value.
If you don't know what's causing the symptoms, then to give somebody something to alleviate the symptoms is close to impossible.
By the time a drug's approved and it hits the general population, we don't know even 50% of the side effects that are involved with that drug.
And these pills cause heart attacks and liver problems and immune system problems and lots of other medical problems. So you're playing with fire.
Varje dag ger personlighetsförändrande medel allvarliga biverkningar. Och även om psykiatriker och läkemedelsföretag till fullo förstår farorna med de medel som de säljer, låter de sina intet ont anande kunder drabbas av konsekvenserna.
Everything became worse. Each mood swing was worse.
He would have chronic headaches, chronic, nausea, not feeling good.
She was very agitated, very jumpy.
She was having horrible hallucinations.
Her personality was disintegrating.
Once he started on that drug, the cloud just stayed over him and stayed over him and stayed over him. It got darker and darker.
He thought there wasn't anything worth living to kill himself. That was not Matthew. That was the drugs.
At least I would like to have said I love you. I didn't get a chance to do that. Förutom att dagligen göra mängder av människor handikappade, dödar psykiatriska droger varje månad omkring 3000. Men den mänskliga ödeläggelsen skulle inte ha blivit så omfattande om inte psykiatrikerna hade arbetat hand i hand med läkemedelsföretag för att förespråka sina droger till läkare över hela världen. Idag skrivs 70% av alla psykiatriska droger ut av vanliga läkare. Och hur åstadkoms detta? Marknadsföring.
It's about creating a good story that uses science, that convinces a physician to think about writing a prescription.
This is not science. This is incredibly effective.
effective marketing has nothing to do with science.
They use what I call statistical contortionism. Basically just skew the numbers, make everything look fantastic, you hide the bad numbers.
They're learning every trick in the book. They're evolving into efficient marketing machines, and it's working.
There's definitely an unholy alliance between psychiatry and pharmaceutical sales. That's a marriage made in heaven.
They're like conjoined twins. They're joined at the wallet.
Och eftersom 374 psykiska störningar fyller psykiatrins diagnostiska handbok och fler är på gång, går affärerna strålande. Läkemedelsföretag har utökat sin samling personlighetsförändrande medel från 44 år 1966 till 174 idag. Tillsammans har de 5 främsta personlighetsförändrande medlen inbringat mer pengar än vad bruttonationalprodukten är i vart och ett av mer än hälften av jordens länder. Totalt hovar den psykiatriska industrin in $1/3 biljon om året. Hur kunde detta hända? Det är en berättelse om bedrägeri som kan vara svår att förstå men livsfarlig att ignorera.
We took him to a psychiatrist, and within a matter of minutes, yeah, she's ADHD, and here's your drug.
Went on to Medicaid, and 5 minutes later, he was on Zyprexa.
He saw the psychiatrist and prescribed the medicine for 20 minutes.
The guy didn't even look at her. He talked to her a little bit. Now, how can you tell if somebody's ADHD or not ADHD from just a few minutes talking to her?
Next thing I know, I'm getting handed a handful of Xanax. That's how easy it is to get these drugs. Just so easy. It was just passed to me like candy. That simple.
If a person were to walk in off the street, sit down with a psychiatrist, the chances of him being prescribed a drug before he were to leave the office, I would have to put it at 100%.
Psychiatrists prescribe drugs. They might have different ways of diagnosing, they might have different ways of interacting with a patient, but it's rare to find a psychiatrist that uses no drugs.
The psychiatrists today are, in quotes, admitting they can't cure these mental illnesses, and they're therefore going to manage your illness by using a drug.
50 years ago, a person who was going through a divorce would have relied on family, friends, clergy, and even the family doctor to a certain extent for conversation to work through the issue. They certainly wouldn't have been medicated.
Det var innan de personlighetsförändrande medlens era. Psykiatriker som befann sig lägst i rang inom läkarkåren arbetade nästan uteslutande på psykiatriska institutioner. Utan några som botats fanns det liten chans att de någonsin skulle bli respekterade av allmänheten och sina läkarkollegor som riktiga läkare.
Psychiatrists had for years been on the fringe of medicine. Typically, the standard doctor internist would have very low regard for psychiatrists because it was understood not to be a very clear science or art.
Psychiatrists wanted to be viewed as physicians, as doctors, and in order to be viewed as physicians and doctors, the people they dealt with had to be viewed as patients. And if doctors dealt with diseases, then their patients had to be diseased.
Psychiatrists had a wonderful opportunity, they felt, to become respected in the eyes of their peers. They raced to create a whole diagnostic book called the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, which was created by consensus.
A group of psychologists and psychiatrists get together, and if they have made common observations, they have a vote and they now classify a new disease. And they give it a number and it graduates into the DSM classification.
And it's a dangerous book. It's a book that has many disorders that could apply to any one of us because the disorders are not real medical diseases. And it's things that apply to nearly all of us at times. Are you afraid of meeting new people? Are you afraid to speak in front of a large crowd of people? Does it make you nervous to go and to talk to your boss about a complaint?
You can invent a mental disorder based on a checklist of symptoms, and that is exactly how the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, the billing Bible for psychiatry, works.
Sedan DSMs första utgåva 1952 har antalet diagnoser stadigt vuxit. Från ett tunt häfte på 130 sidor som angav 106 så kallade psykiska störningar har DSM svällt upp till hela 886 sidor. Det är bara genom att använda denna bok som psykiatriker kan diagnostisera, droga folk och ta betalt för sina tjänster. Faktum är att den psykiatriska industrin för närvarande använder DSM för att få in över 72 miljarder dollar i form av privata och offentliga försäkringspengar.
The DSM is used to diagnose and then give a label, and the label is used for billing purposes. That's how they get paid.
You have to have a term in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual in order to then call it a disease and treat it as a disease and write a prescription for it.
And so because they can vote it in, they can create, and then the drug industry can just take over and market their drugs for those new disorders.
And those drugs were welcomed by psychiatry leaders because it made us real doctors.
Of course, first the public had to believe that there was something wrong with them, and that that thing wrong was biochemical, and that that could then be treated by a drug which was supposed to cure all.
And so it was relatively easy, I think, to say, well, look, let's start looking at mental illness as fundamentally a matter of chemical imbalance in the brain.
Chemical imbalance is a term that's used as a marketing ploy, as opposed to anything that there's scientific evidence to support.
Nobody has yet measured, demonstrated, or created a test to show that somebody has a chemical imbalance in their brain. Period.
How do you market a drug that restores the chemical balance or corrects a chemical imbalance? How can you do that in good conscience if you don't even know what one is?
The whole myth of the chemical imbalance was created to sell drugs.
Och medan psykiatriker och läkemedelsföretag har använt denna myt för att tjäna miljarder genom att föra in enorma mängder personlighetsförändrande medel i kropparna på intet ont anande kunder, har allmänheten betalat det yttersta priset. Omkring hälften av alla amerikaner som begår självmord är på personlighetsförändrande medel. Man uppskattar att personlighetsförändrande medel varje år dödar mer än 2,5 gånger fler människor än det antal som mördas. Och vem är det som har betrotts med att skydda allmänheten från dessa farliga personlighetsförändrande medel? I Förenta Staterna är det Food and Drug Administration, FDA, vars rådgivande paneler rörande psykiatriska medel domineras av psykiatriker som pendlar mellan läkemedelsindustri, universitet, privata praktiker och myndigheter, den så kallade svängdörren.
The revolving door at FDA is one of the primary reasons why the system that we have works so poorly. That revolving door is a direct result of the fact that a group of people with the same mindset are put into positions of being regulators and in the position of being formulators and sellers and marketers.
The panels that are formed by the FDA to evaluate these drugs, the psychiatrists who are on those panels, almost all of them have conflicts of interest where they have directly or indirectly received funding from the very industry and the very parties within the industry whose drugs they are evaluating.
So there's this tight little relationship between psychiatry, pharmaceutical industry, and FDA, where they each mutually support each other, and yet the mental health of the population does not improve.
Ta till exempel den panel hos FDA som utvärderade och godkände det antidepressiva medlet Paxil. Varenda psykiatriker i den panelen har ekonomiska band till läkemedelsindustrin. Och dessa intressekonflikter har varit tillräckligt vanliga för att framkalla en undersökning av kongressen.
When I check these advisory committees who make recommendations to the FDA, and they're always approved after the advisory committee, I found that there were conflicts of interest. I found that many of the people on the advisory committees had never filed a proper report on stocks and bonds that they owned that might be viewed as a conflict of interest, and they're by law supposed to do that.
Och detta nätverk av ekonomiska intressekonflikter mellan psykiatrin, läkemedelsindustrin och FDA befästes än mer 1992 efter lagen om användaravgift för receptbelagda läkemedel, Prescription Drug User Fee Act eller PDUFA. Genom denna lag kunde FDA betalas en avgift på $100 000 per preparat för